was only a month ago.
We had
It was a
3 of
very
them.
short.
Charlene's got 3 papers of this one that she'd like to sign. Did you send them back?
Send them back, and I just signed some more. I'd like to call the June 22nd meeting of the Board of Water Resources to order. I will start out, and I'd like to welcome everybody here, taking time to come and spend time with us. We'd start out with their approval of the minutes.
Chairman, I'd move approval of the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the May 11th minutes. Do we have a
Second.
second by Blaine? All in favor? Aye. As a chair report, we don't have much happening since our last meeting. The board took a tour yesterday out to the Great Salt Lake Pump Station to see if they still worked. And I didn't get a report back whether it worked or not, but things been moving on. We're getting a few new applications that's for down the road, and that's about all we got new to report. So with that, let's go to the feasibility reports, and the first one is Burns Bench Irrigation Company, and with them we have Mont Pratt and Chris Thompson, and Jacqueline will give us the information.
Chairman, members of the board, the Burns Bench Irrigation Company provides irrigation water from Brush Creek to its 25 shareholders. The proposed project is located on Brush Creek, approximately 5 miles northwest of Jensen in Uintah County. The applicant has previously received financial assistance from the board in 1960 and 1961. The Burton Ditch Irrigation Company and the Murray Ditch Pipeline Inc. company are also current users of their existing system, and they get their water from Ashley Creek. The applicant will execute a service agreement with both of these companies governing the water rights, the operation and maintenance, and funding aspects for the project. And the project ownership distribution is approximately 57% for Burns Bench, 25% for Burton Ditch Company, and 70% for Murray Ditch Pipeline. Water from Red Fleet Reservoir, which was constructed in the early 1980s, supplements the three companies. The irrigation companies worked with the Bureau of Reclamation in 2000 to pipe some of their main canals, which allows the Bureau to flow 1,800 acre-feet of water through to Stewart Lake. The company's water rights are comprised of their primary shares from the original water right and a share from the supplement water from Red Fleet Reservoir, allowing all of the landowners from the three companies to divert 3.8 acre-feet per acre. The applicant's current distribution system primarily consists of an inlet structure, a settling basin, and an open earth canal prior to entering the pressurized irrigation system. So this picture will, on the left-hand side, that's where you see the inlet structure, and then their settling basin is on the right-hand side. And this is a picture of their inlet structure. So existing problems and conditions is that the current inlet structure does not adequately remove sediment before it enters the pressurized irrigation system, and sediment settles in the pipes and the wheels, and it leads to high maintenance costs as well as increased water that is needed to flush the wheel lines. So this is an image of the water going into the canal. The applicant is requesting financial assistance from the board to construct a new inlet structure, settling basin, and a pipeline. The first part of the project is a screen and an inlet structure which will remove debris larger than 1 inch and will be able to accommodate the flow that the current inlet structure is not able to. And the settling basin will allow the three companies to remove the sediment before it enters the system. And the proposed pipeline will consist of a 54-inch HDPE pipe, which will replace approximately 300 linear feet of open canal. Project benefits include an estimated conservation of 232 acre-feet of water annually, reduced maintenance costs and on-farm costs, and reduce the amount of sediment entering the system. The proposed cost sharing is 85% from the Board of Water Resources and 15% from the applicant. Staff recommends that the board authorize 85% of the project costs up to $504,900, and that it be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $25,300. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Anything, Mr. Pratt, anything you'd like to add? I think the board has some questions on this project, so questions?
Mr. Chairman and gentlemen from Burns Bench Irrigation Company, I just had a question at the percentage of design and construction engineering costs seem a little elevated to me, and I just wondered if there's an explanation about the engineering work you've done on that and why the cost is high as a percentage of the total cost.
Okay. So the percentage that you guys are seeing is 20%. The percentage that was submitted with the application was 16%, and currently we're under contract to do it for 16%. The structure is quite a bit of work for a lot of details and a lot of information. So 8% into design, 8% into construction inspection. So it's for a smaller project, there's quite a bit of surveying and work going into it, but we felt like 16% was a fair rate. And
what you guys saw in the report was 20%, and that was because I had added an additional 4% because at one point it was there was talk that it was going to be a phased project. So when I wrote the report, it hadn't been completely determined that it wasn't. So I had added 4% because that's what I had done on a previous project. So that's what accounts for the 4% difference from what they had originally submitted to me.
Thank you. Appreciate that additional information.
Now, the
Mr. Chair.
16% is 8% for design and 8% for inspection of the construction?
Correct. We did it as a lump sum, and so it'll probably be a little bit heavier on the design side, but that was what was discussed.
Okay. Other questions?
So have you had success, or have you designed this type of structure before and had success with it? What's been your experience with this type of system?
Yes, designed several sediment structures, and I think the toughest things with sediment structures is you just don't realize how much sediment is coming down a creek, and it always seems like you get more than what you really anticipate. I've designed several structures down in Emory where they have high salt loads, and designed a couple up here in Duchesne County. Randy Crozier has been very good advocate on this project. He's come up with the design's changed, and the cost has actually come down with his suggestions. We really appreciate, he's been a valuable asset out there for us. But we feel like that this will be a very beneficial, and it'll help get that sediment. It'll help with the heaviers. The gate will be designed that during high flows when the water level rises, so if a storm comes down the creek, it'll open up during those storm events. And that's really, those storm events are what really fill the settling basin. So if they can keep the storm events out, that'll help a lot with the sediment.
Other questions? None, would entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the board authorize 85% of the cost of the project up to $504,900, and that it be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $25,300.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Blaine seconds it. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Haights Creek Irrigation Company. We'd like to welcome Rodney Hill, the general manager, and Brandon Nelson, the project manager. And Todd is going to make the presentation.
All right. So in my 18 plus years with the board, I don't think I've ever been quite in this situation, but it's a delight to be before the board, Mr. Chair and board members. The Haights Creek Irrigation Company is located in Davis County and provides pressurized irrigation water to customers in Fruit Heights and Kaysville. They have currently about 3,944 residential and commercial connections and 62 agricultural connections. So they primarily serve lawn and garden systems and outdoor irrigation. The source of their supply comes from two sources. One is Haights Creek and Bear Creek, which is collected here at the mouth of Bear Canyon at this diversion structure. And that is diverted into upper reservoir up on the Bonneville Bench above the community of Fruit Heights. And they get 13% of their water supply from this source. The other comes from Weber Basin Water Conservancy District, the Davis Aqueduct, which lies just above this reservoir, kind of on that bench where the trees are. So they get most of their supply from Weber Basin, about 87%. From that upper reservoir, it enters a pressurized system of piping, which was installed in the 1960s with a U.S. Bureau of Reclamation project. And the network includes 2 more reservoirs, including Green Road Reservoir and another one on 200 North. That's also the name of that other reservoir. And when it was installed, they used asbestos cement pipe. And imagine that piping is getting pretty old, and it's causing the company a lot of maintenance and repair issues and leaks and so forth. So they're looking to replace those. Also, there at the valve box and inlet at Green Road Reservoir, they use a butterfly valve to throttle the flow, the high pressure in that pipe, to kind of dissipate the energy. And that is subject to cavitation and other maintenance issues. So this project map shows the project area. The larger purple boundary is the extent of the Haights Creek Irrigation Company service area. And there in red is the project area. And the project consists of installing 75 flow meters on secondary individual connections through that residential area. It also includes replacing all the cement asbestos pipes in that distribution area as well. And at the Green Road Reservoir inlet, they would like to install a hydroelectric facility to take advantage of that energy that needs to be dissipated and generate some revenue. They're going to use the iPearl Itron meter for the secondary meters, and that's, I believe, what Weber Basin has decided to use. So it's a good, reliable meter that's been tested and shown to be reliable. The benefits of the project include reducing the persistent water losses and frequent repairs due to the asbestos cement pipes, and reducing overwatering in those 75 connections with the secondary meters. They estimate that it will be conserve an annual amount of about 159 acre-feet of water, and they'll be able to develop up to 183 kilowatt hours of clean, renewable hydropower annually. So the recommended cost share and repayment is shown here. The Haights Creek would like the board to fund $288,000 of the project, just over a third of the amount. They've received a Water Smart grant from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation of $231,000, and they are willing to put forth over about 30%, a third of the project cost at $265,000, for a total project of $784,000. So the staff recommends the board authorize 36.7% of the project cost, up to $288,000, and that it be purchased at 2.7% interest over 10 years with annual payments of approximately $33,200. This is staff's report.
Thank you, Todd. Mr. Hill and Brandon, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I think you summarized it very well.
Okay. Questions from the board, and I have one. You're going to put meters in there. You're going to put 75 meters. Are they 1-inch meters?
Yes.
And of the 3,900 residential connections and commercial, how do you choose which 75 gets the meter?
About that much. In other words, it's just a start. We understand it's just a start.
So you'll be putting meters on everything?
We'll be, yes. As of right now, all of the new developments are required to have meters. Anything that is any kind of a new service whatsoever is required to have meters. And we're planning on phasing meters into the entire system over a period of years.
Are you going to use the meters as a management tool, as a revenue source?
Right now, management tool. Revenue source is not considered.
On the hydro plant, have you made any contact with the power company or got a contract with them to buy the power?
No, we do not. As of this time, the application has been completed, but it has not been yet submitted.
What happens is nobody buys the power? You're about 300 or nearly 200,000 tied in that unit.
If they don't want to buy it and it's not economically feasible, then that's a part we'll have to talk about.
That's probably a condition of the Water Smart loan, was it not? Grant.
Yeah, the hydroelectric facility was certainly a criterion for the evaluation of the Water Smart application, yes. If I can speak to that a little bit, so we have retained some expertise in that and conducted our own background into that and feel that it's very feasible, and don't really have any concerns about the feasibility of the project, or that Rocky Mountain Power would. We feel that in some preliminary steps that with respect to Rocky Mountain Power, that there aren't any major red flags identified to this point. And that level 3 application process would identify any of those prior to, going into the design.
That
of the
is a
project.
concern.
So, yeah.
Other question from the board?
Chairman, I have a question. In there, you say you're going to abandon the asbestos, the old pipeline, asbestos cement. How are you proposing to abandon it? What do you mean by abandon? Leave it in the ground, or dispose of it someplace? And if you're disposing of it someplace, how much is that going to cost?
Abandoning it in place.
In place.
Is
Okay.
is the method that we anticipate. Yeah.
Just leave it
So
where
we
it's
would
at.
we would identify a new alignment for that replacement pipe and abandon the existing asbestos cement in place.
And as a follow-up to discussion just barely had, if the hydro doesn't come through, you said you'd have to take a time out and reevaluate. What do you mean by that, as far as will this whole project go away, or just that component, or?
That component, I would suspect, certainly that would require some discussions with the other funding source, the Bureau of Reclamation, about what would be acceptable as replacement to meet that evaluation criterion of hydro. Probably be a much smaller scale, perhaps some solar aspect of that to meet the requirement in their minds.
A follow-up question that if you do away with the hydro component, does the 231,000 WaterSmart grant go away also?
Specifically, I don't know the specific answer to that. I think it would certainly raise some eyebrows with the with the reclamation folks who have granted that $231,000 to this point. So in my mind, that's a component that we intend to pursue, obviously.
But these questions probably need to be answered before we go for federal funds. This is a fee.
I'm sorry, let me clarify which questions concerning.
On the hydro,
Hydroelectric.
whether you got a contractor.
In other words, what he's saying is that what you're here today is a feasibility. Do we initially approve those funds contingent upon you being able to do what you need to do, and at a later date, after you get all those issues resolved, is when the funds would actually be committed? I believe that's
Yes.
what we're saying. And so any action today would not be committing those funds from our end. It's just seeing is it feasible. And
I see. I believe that so there's an interconnect application that's prepared that has not been submitted. At the completion of that level 3 interconnect application process with Rocky Mountain Power, they will then issue a report that will take several weeks. They'll have some preliminary findings within several weeks, but then several weeks beyond that, then they would issue kind of their technical review, I suppose it would be called. But that would kind of be at the end of the level 3 application review process.
Are you looking for committal of funds in August?
No. We probably will not start any kind of construction till fall.
So we won't see you on the August meeting? Because our next meeting after that would be October.
Yeah, I guess that's for a discussion.
It'd be fine.
Yeah, when's the August deadline?
There wouldn't be a deadline for August.
Because we are kind of already in process. So I guess that's whether we went for August or October.
Mr. Chairman, question, and not to belabor this, but it's going to sound like that. But Brandon, has JUB had much experience with working with Rocky Mountain Power on these kind of things? I've been disappointed on a couple of projects in Cache Valley that.
Yes. So we have retained a sub-consultant that is well-versed in that, and we're relying on their information, and they have no qualms about this. They've gone through this recently with another project, actually in Cache Valley, with Rocky Mountain Power, and have some others in the works with them. And so we feel pretty confident in that. I mean, we've got to take their information, make an evaluation before we move forward, and we've done that and feel comfortable with those recommendations and the feasibility of it. So,
sure, and location of power line, transmission lines, and
yeah,
things affect
I'm
the
happy to
cost
talk
greatly.
specifics about that. Yeah, so preliminary discussions with Rocky Mountain Power. There hasn't been any formal submittal yet of an interconnect application, but yes, there have been discussions with Rocky Mountain Power about the interconnect location, which would be just a few hundred feet east at the corner of Green Road and Highway 89. There's enough demand on the grid there to accept the power that would be generated. So it's just the formal application process there.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Well, I have a couple of comments, I guess, before I propose to make a motion. Rod, when we had our initial meeting this goes back to Chairman Farrell's question relative to why were the 75 locations identified. And as I recall, the conversation that we had when we had that initial meeting, it was they were kind of the priority area where a lot of these are backyard connections now, and they need to be moved to the front type thing, and that was just an area that you selected as a company to initiate this process.
Yes, that is correct. Not only are a lot of the lines in the backyards, which of course makes a very difficult repair and access to, but this is also a good area because it's close to Green Road. It's an older area as we move down through it. And so it is, when you combine both of those projects together, it works really well.
And just to clarify the timeline, today we are here for a temporary initial approval of the project. And then as these further questions are answered, then have to come back to the board for committal of funds. And so if the objective is to start that this fall, which I have been under the impression that was kind of the indication, then would need to be prepared to come back to the August meeting for committal of funds. If not, then it postpones it till October, which may put you beyond a feasible time to start the project. So just clarifying the timeline there a little bit.
That's correct. If we can get, as we continue to move, if we know we have I'm going to say a commitment, an initial origination commitment of that, we will continue to really push hard, particularly with Utah Power and that type of thing, because there's a lot of that hinges upon that particular application.
I see some advantages to committal of funds in August myself, as far as schedule goes, yeah.
Okay, then with that, I'll would be prepared to make a motion, and that is that the board authorize 36.7% of the cost of the project up to $288,000, and that it be purchased at 2.7% interest over 10 years with an annual payment of approximately $33,200. And that would be my motion. And I was one other item I forgot after the motion is made, I guess, just a clarifying point from Todd.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion? Randy seconds it. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens?
The question that I just wanted to have clarified, and that is give an explanation as to why the 2.7% interest rate was chosen.
Yeah, recently, I believe it was 2 board meetings ago, the board discussed offering a new incentive for installing secondary meters, and that would be giving a 1% interest over a period not to exceed 5 years less than the warranty on the meters. And in this case, that applies. So we took the portion of the project that was the installation of the meters or the software and related, anything related to the secondary meters, and applied that 1% to that component. Otherwise, it would have been at 3%. So that 1% on that small component of the project brought the interest rate down to 2.7%.
I just wanted to have that explanation for the benefit of the applicants, because there is that incentive built in because of the installation of the meters.
And it's probably worthy of note that this is the first project to take advantage of that program. So.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Central Utah Water Conservancy District. We have Roger Pearson, Sarah Sutherland, and Sean Lambert. Roger, I didn't hear anybody boo. You know, usually on the Utah Jazz, when one of their members leave and he comes back to play them, we get boos. But
yeah, I take it personally.
Before you start, Tom, I need to make a comment. I'm going to recuse myself from the vote of this item. Wasatch County Special Service District, SSA number 1, receives 11,600 acre-feet of water delivered through it, supplemental, and I'm serving as chairman of that Special Service District. I will not be voting on this.
Excuse me, Tom, but Mr. Chairman, we might notice as well as Roger that Gene Shawcroft is also a former team player for the Division of Water Resources too. So.
I don't see Gene here.
No, but he's the chairman of the.
Yeah. Tom, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Central Utah Water Conservancy District was organized in 1964 to assist in the development of the water resources that cover all or part of 8 different counties in the state of Utah. The district has teamed up with a number of irrigation companies in the Heber Valley that serve approximately 12,000 acres of ground, which includes about 1,600 acres of residential lawn and garden type of water use. As part of the effort of developing the water, the district has joined with those irrigation companies in the Wasatch County Water Efficiency Project. And in 2001, as part of that project, the district took over the operation of the Timpanogos Canal. So if you look at your map, it is the upper blue line along there. And I assume also the operation of the Wasatch Canal. The Timpanogos Canal is about 11 miles long, and since the district took over operation, it is lined or enclosed about 2/3 of that canal, which they focused on the stretches that had the most likelihood of failure, or if it did breach, that would cause the most damage. But about the 2.5 mile stretch between Jordanelle Reservoir, which is barely off the map to the north, down to State Highway 32, remains pretty much unlined. At the end of the Timpanogos Canal, as well as the Wasatch Canal, the district operates some regulating ponds. And if you look at the little blow up on in your map, you can see the upper right-hand corner. That's the actual regulating pond, and the rest of that area has been diked around for an overflow pond. So the condition of the Timpanogos Canal, about a 6,400 stretch of that is located on a steep hillside, and recently development has been happening around that canal. and the district is becoming concerned about the safety. So they are proposing this time to either put in box culvert or line about 6,400 feet of that canal. I have a few more pictures to, if I can get this one to work, just use the button. Just more pictures of the location of the canal versus the houses. And as you can see, they're really close, and on the downhill side, it's steep. You can see those full-size trees that are the tops are just poking up above the edge of the canal. And that's all after the district has already done a lot of improvement work on that canal. This is a picture of the regulating pond at the end of the Timpanogos Canal. It's up. This area is the regulating canal, and there's an overflow structure into the overflow pond, and you can see a little bit of water in the overflow. And the building there is the pump station, which pumps water into the pressurized irrigation company or systems of the companies that they're working with. Just another picture. So as part of the project, the district is requesting funds to enlarge the ponds because they're having a problem with, since the number of residences in the Heber Valley are increasing, and they're trying to enforce the policy of no residential watering during the day. Those ponds get drained at night, and there's not enough capacity in the ponds to serve both the residential and the agricultural uses. So the project benefits include increasing the safety of the Timpanogos Canal, as well as increasing the capacity of the regulating ponds, which would enable the applicant to restrict, which would further enable the applicant to restrict daytime use by secondary water users. And so there's the cost estimate. The district would also wish, if the request for the board, if the cost for the project is low enough, that they will also have a desire to increase the capacity of the regulating pond on the Wasatch Canal. So staff recommends that the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $5,950,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $348,400, and this includes reserves to the bond. That's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Roger, Sarah, you got anything? John, you got anything you'd like to add to that?
Nope. I think if you guys have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
Questions from the board?
Chairman, I'm just curious on your enlargement on the pond. Can you not go any larger than you're proposing, the 25.5 acres? Seems like a lot of expense for less than 8 acre feet of storage capacity change.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to. So our cost estimate on the pond enlargement is pretty good shot in the dark on the cost estimate. The reason for that is we're working with these 9 irrigation companies, and they have to pay 100% of the cost of the pond expansion. And we have to also keep those overflow ponds for emergency flood control. And so contingent upon your authorization of the project is when we'll really get down into the details of the pond expansion, hire some outside consultant, and get down and decide how much it's really going to cost. The other issue is our overflow ponds are quite a bit deeper than a regulating pond, and so we can only utilize, even though the overflow pond is 15 feet deep, we can only utilize the top 4 feet because that's what will flow into our pump station. And so, future projects, we could also build some lift station to pump the water, the dead storage water out of the bottom of those ponds up into into the regulating pond so that it will flow into the pump station. That would be an additional project someday in the future that these irrigation companies could do. So,
Good.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, just a question on, in the description it talks about box culvert or lining, and in the photograph presented, it looked like there's almost encroachment by the homes above the canal. Areas like that be more likely to get the box culvert than the lining?
yeah, so the reason for the box culvert is where we have the really steep uphill slopes, because we get debris, rocks, all kinds of things coming down into the canal that could potentially plug the canal. We've also had oversaturation of the uphill slope due to the watering of the residents up there. As they water, that uphill slope gets saturated, and we get all kinds of stuff coming down in the canal. And so on the picture you saw is where we would do a box culvert. A little further towards Highway 32, the slopes aren't as steep, and that's where we'll do the canal lining to save cost, because we won't get a lot of the erosion and stuff coming into the canal.
Thank you.
With your pond enlargement, you talking of raising the embankment or going down?
So I don't know if we can go back to the picture, but what we've got is we've got two ponds. So the little pond is our current regulating storage, and that's what we use for our day to night peaking, try to help us, get through that. And so the intent of the project is just to dike off a portion of that overflow pond, and utilize that as future regulating storage. And the reason we can do that is because we've got on the Timp Canal, we've got a 9-hour, when it was designed, it was 9 hours to get from the dam to the pond. And now we've lined so many sections that now it only takes about 4.5 to 5 hours. And so the amount of capacity we need in that overflow pond has gone down. And so our intent would be to just dike across there and put a clay liner in there. So.
Is that going to require any permitting with the rights over dams?
No, we don't think so. These are all federal projects, and so we've done NEPA for all of this kind of stuff, but I don't think it's going to cause any issues with water rights, dam safety. So.
When you go over 20 acre feet, there is some additional restrictions, so it's a good point.
There are for regulating reservoirs.
Okay.
If you're under 20, you're exempt, but once you pass 20, I believe those regulations kick in. So.
Okay.
And that's a state requirement, so I don't know if being a part of a federal project, where those requirements cross.
We'll look into that.
You just want
sure.
to make sure, because you could.
Yeah, we'll talk to them about that.
It may take coordination between the feds and
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for the project? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend to the board that the board authorize 85% of the cost of the project up to $5,950,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $348,400, including reserves.
Thank you, Charles. Do we have a second to that motion? Jim seconds it.
I think that in an abundance of caution, I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself from the vote. My employer, the Central District is a client of my employer, and I'm currently the principal investigator on a contract for Central. And I know probably overly cautious, but I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll call for the vote now. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record note that Juliet and myself did abstain from voting. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Now we go into the committal of funds. The first one is Powder Mountain Water and Sewer Improvement District. Ben?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So we have here Powder Mountain Water and Sewer Improvement District. The district provides water to just over 100 residential connections. They're located near the top of Powder Mountain in in Weber County. Recently, the applicant's redundant water supply, which was a series of wells that they had up there, was determined to be under the influence of surface water by the Utah Division of Drinking Water and was condemned for potable use without treatment. The applicant is left with only one water source, which is not capable of providing enough water to meet their peak demand. As part of the proposed project, they would like to drill a potable well and install a well house. The well will start out as an 8-inch test hole. This is information that I gathered only this morning. And upon finding suitable water source, the well will be bored out to a 10-inch well, which will be drilled to up to 1,000 feet deep, depending on the depth at which they find a suitable water source. Benefits of the project include bringing the system into regulatory compliance, which is being able to meet peak demand, and also having a redundant water source in case their primary source fails. That will also safeguard the system against potential contamination issues. Powder Mountain Water and Sewer Improvement District cost sharing and repayment plan. The project is estimated to cost $1.488 million with a proposed cost sharing of 85 to 15%. Staff recommends that the board commit 85% of the project cost up to $1,265,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $44,000, including reserves. I do have a little bit of additional information which I was able to gather. The well that is proposed to be drilled, so the applicant actually has a well that is there, hasn't been used for some time, for quite a few years. Has not been abandoned, but it is currently there. So the Division of Water Rights has issued a start card to the applicant based on a number of conditions, namely that they will abandon the well permanently, the existing well that's there permanently. The new well will be drilled within 150 feet of the old well, that they will not use any more water than was used out of the old well, and that the well will be in compliance with their regulations, and that is staff support.
Ben, if that's the case, you got to abandon the existing well. Where does the redundancy of water source come into this?
So there is a well up on the top of the mountain, and then the existing well that they're...
Well, they have 2 additional wells.
Yes, the one well is the one. The second well that they have is the one that I mentioned they haven't used for quite some time, and that is the well that Water Rights issued their start card based upon. They do have one additional well that's up at the top of the mountain, which they are currently using.
Well, if I might clarify so we understand, they're not moving it from a spring. It's an existing well that had been used historically, but because of surface water influence, it no longer meets drinking water specs, is why they're drilling the new well.
The surface water influence was determined on their springs, which were condemned. The existing well that has been abandoned, I'm not sure why they don't use it anymore, but it hasn't been used for quite some time.
Okay, because I was That just seems odd that you've got a well that they're abandoning. It seems that they would be moving the water rights there.
I believe there were
spring.
I believe there were issues mechanically with the well that caused it.
All right.
Their water rights, they're kind of ambiguous. They're pretty old. They're kind of ambiguous as to whether they were for the well or for the spring. And so the water rights that they have in the spring, they have not submitted any paperwork for it to have them transferred to the new well, but they do plan on doing that in the future.
So this is just a replacement well then, basically, is the route they're going?
This is a replacement
Drill it
well.
within 150 feet of an existing.
Yes, yeah.
Other questions? Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion then, Mr. Chair. And that is that the board authorize 85% of the cost of the project up to $1,265,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $44,000, which would include the return.
We had an error in that motion. The way it was written, it should be instead of authorize, commit.
Board commit 85%. Change to the motion?
So the motion is to commit 85% of the cost of the project up to $1,265,000. We have a second to that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Some of their Scipio Irrigation Company. Lane Jensen. Go ahead, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, back in August of 2016, the board authorized a project to install about 3.5 miles of pipeline between Scipio Reservoir and the town of Scipio. You can see that on the map. It's the dotted red line. And it basically covers the area that they'd used to transmit their water through a natural water channel. And then it goes from the upstream pipe there down to where the beginning of their Highline Canal. So the company is ready to proceed with purchasing pipe and getting the project going as soon as they can. So they're requesting that the funds be committed at this time, and the funding terms have not changed since authorization. So staff recommends that the board provide 56.7% of the project cost up to $1,700,000. That would be purchased at 1% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $77,200. And that's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Questions? Seeing none, we'd entertain a motion.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board commit 56.7% of the project cost up to $1,700,000, that it be purchased at 1% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $77,200.
Thank you, Blaine. Do we have a second? Kyle seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We got a special item. Main Creek Irrigation Company is asking for authorization and committal in the same meeting. For representing Main Creek Irrigation Company, we have Dale Carson, president of Main Creek Irrigation Company, Mike Marshall with the NRCS, and Jared Elliott, the NRCS. Welcome.
Good morning again. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Main Creek Irrigation Company has a service area located just south of Wallsburg in Utah County. They have Wasatch County. My bad.
Can't move.
They're so close. There are 689 shares in the company divided among 94 shareholders. Water taken primarily from Main Creek is used to irrigate approximately 450 acres of residential and agricultural land. Seepage loss from the canal, from their canal is significant. An estimated 260 acre-feet of water is lost annually. This seepage loss is a hazard to Main Creek road located adjacent to the open canal. In addition to the seepage problems, screens in the pipe system are ineffective, requiring frequent repair and maintenance. And they allow debris into their pressurized system, which clogs sprinklers. As part of their proposed project, they would like to pipe 6,000, there's 6,000 feet of the open canal, which is the remainder of their open canal in the system. And they would also like to install more effective screens. The proposed project will result in decreased risk and liability to the canal company. It will conserve an estimated 260 acre-feet annually, and will also reduce system maintenance. Staff recommends the board commit 42.1% of the project cost up to $141,000, and that will be purchased at 0% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $9,400. This is staff support.
Thanks, Ben. Dale, you or Mike, or have anything you'd like to add to that?
About 4 years ago, we had the NRCS invited to our annual meeting, and I think it was Dave Hansen come up and expressed that there was money available in Wallsburg area for conservations and water systems, and so they asked me to kind of ramrod it, and so we got those who were eligible to sign up for NRCS benefits to do so, most of them, and we got more than half of the number of shares that have signed up for their benefits. So, you know, the board member or the shareholders are happy to have this happen. They're really looking forward to it. We have been saving money for the last few years to do it, but the cost seems to go up faster than we can collect money to do so. So this is something we really need. We lose a lot of water in our system right now, and the system is just to pipe the open ditch, you know. And with the whole valley is in sprinkler irrigation right now. There's nobody in Wallsburg that really floods, and with an open ditch like that, we have a hard time keeping the sprinkler cleaned and working properly. So that's, you know.
And in Wallsburg, you can't afford to lose a lot of water.
What's that?
You can't afford to lose a lot of water.
No,
in Wallsburg.
no, we lose a lot of water in that open ditch.
Questions from the board? Mike?
What you just said intrigued me. You said that not all of your stockholders signed up for the NRCS money.
Well,
is
some
that
of them
right?
are not eligible yet to receive NRCS benefits. You have to be a producing agriculture producer, and some of our stockholders own shares and they lease those to others. The water is used, and some of them do not have enough acreage to qualify for NRCS's benefits, so they could not sign up.
Okay, what's your shareholders' position on getting money from this board? Are not all of them in support of that too, or
in the annual meeting they was all in favor of doing the project, and more of them would have signed up if they. In fact, we had some go in and they were told they were not eligible for benefits. So, yeah, the membership is all in favor of it.
Other questions? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
I have a question. Is this an authorization and committal, or just a committal?
Authorization and committal.
Okay.
That's why it's a special item.
Change the word.
All right, I would go ahead and make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the board authorize and commit funds of 42.1% of the project's cost up to $141,000, and that it be purchased at 0% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $9,400.
Have a motion. Do we have a
Second
second?
to the motion.
Charles seconds the motion. Any question on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
We have some guests we'd like to recognize. Janelle Cook. Angela McKenna. Angela? Okay. Justin Ackerson. Okay. All right. And John Perry. Welcome. Now we'd like to get an update on the Lake Powell Pipeline report.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, the Lake Powell Pipeline, not a lot has changed as far as what we're working on since the last time we presented. We're involved with a lot of the same efforts of still coordinating with the federal agencies, FERC, BLM, National Park Service, Reclamation, and then the state agencies, the State Historic Preservation Offices and Division of Water Quality, trying to finish up the information that we need to submit to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission so that they can issue the notice of ready for environmental analysis. So we're still involved in that effort. The last meeting we discussed the need for the contract amendment with our Stantec contract, and that has now been signed by the division and by Stantec, and that amendment provided some modified terms and conditions that we feel will enhance the work and oversight there, and then also provide some additional time and money that will get us through the end of 2018, and we anticipate, or we are hopeful that would get us through this information submittal phase of getting everything that we need to FERC so that they can proceed to prepare the EIS. So we're still heavily involved in that process. The work is moving along, but that's where we're still at. Any questions from the board on the progress on the Lake Powell Pipeline project? Okay. Thank you. We'll keep you updated.
The water use and conservation report. Todd, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. What I'd like to do is talk about the water use stuff first. My PowerPoint is going crazy on me, so let me stop that for just a second. As you know, Senate Bill 251 requires us to do third-party review of our municipal and industrial water use numbers. We put an RFP out through state purchasing. We had two candidates that submitted incomplete packages, and so we had to pull the RFP. We opened it up again. We had three companies resubmit. We've made a selection on the top candidate, and we're in negotiations with them to proceed on that. We'll know a lot more in August once we get started and work on that. So on the conservation side, we're excited. I think we talked to you a little bit about the Hall of Fame or Shame component. The Fame reports are neighbors that are tattling on their neighbors and saying, hey, these are some good things, or people presenting good things that they're doing in their lots, in their yards, and putting pictures and those kind of things out there. The shame component are complaints, and that's a way for us to find folks that are irrigating the asphalt, trying to get that to grow. And we have a lot of good neighbors that don't mind tattling on somebody. And so they contact us through this fame or shame component. We contact the local water districts. The water districts go and meet with them, try to curb their appetite for water use. It's been a pretty good program so far. About 75% of the submittals are on the shame side. That's way up. And the fame side, we're up to about 25%. There for a while it was down around 10%, but on the fame side, we've got some really cool things that people are doing out there. And let me show some pictures. So we're currently in the submittals for June, and here's some of the pictures of some of the landscapes and things that people are doing to reduce their turf grass. That one in Syracuse. Some xeric landscape in West Valley. Flipping your strip, putting some very good looking landscape in. Salt Lake City, flipping the strip. Cottonwood Heights. People are really excited and catching. Here's one in Syracuse where they've fixed the strip. This is the May winter. Our May winner was featured in a Fox 13 news story, and she won a $50 Home Depot gift card for those things that she's doing. Now, as we've worked through this process, we worked through the department and the governor's office, and they were all a little concerned at some points in time that mine or yours or theirs would come up on either the fame or the shame, whichever one they were most worried about. But we haven't seen too much of that. Our director hasn't been on there either side yet, and that's good. So anyway, that's my report today. So
thank you. Eric, director's report.
Okay. So just a few things to report to you today. Of course, you know how good of a water supply we had with the snowpack this past winter. We're kind of watching the tail end of that melt out here in northern Utah, but the thing that we're seeing is a lot of the reservoirs are filling. A lot of them are spilling, and we've got some increase in Great Salt Lake's elevation. It's kind of flattened out. I think it may have peaked and would be on its way down at this point, but some of the bigger reservoirs, Bear Lake is expected to just almost fill this year. Lake Powell has come up 38 feet since the low, and it's still increasing at almost a half a foot a day, and so we'll see some more gains there on that reservoir. So it's been a great year. One of the things that we talked about in another separate water conservation event this past week was, even though it's a good year, doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to conserve, because conservation is not a drought response program. For us, it is a long-term ethic that we're trying to develop, and I think we're seeing the people of Utah very much catch on with that ethic and do much better than they were, say, 10 years ago with their watering. And so we're continuing to ramp up water conservation efforts. This thing that Todd showed you, the fame or shame, has been kind of a fun and interesting thing, and there was a little bit of nervousness about how that was gonna go, but I think it's turned out to be a very good thing. On the Colorado River, there's renewed efforts to try to complete the minute with Mexico. And a minute in terms of the Colorado River Law of the River is an amendment to the agreements that exist and are in place right now. The current minute is expiring at the end of this year, and that minute dealt with shortage sharing, with surplus sharing, with environmental water for the benefit of Mexico, and those sorts of things. And so this new minute will add to and build on some of those ideas, and we expect to have that landed sometime this fall, in advance of the current minute expiring. Drought contingency planning, in spite of the wet weathers, is something that we still realize that we need to work on, and that will be moving along hand in hand with that Mexican minute effort, so that at some time in the future, should we need to, or should the lower basin need to, we will have drought contingency plans in our pockets. For the lower basin, I think it becomes more of a critical issue than it does for the upper basin. They are aware that they are taking more water out of Lake Mead than is flowing into it, and there are things that they need to do. They're working towards those things, and we're working with them hand in hand, especially on this drought contingency plan. Even though these are separate plans, we've got one for the lower basin, one for the upper basin, just making sure that those are compatible. So would say that things are still friendly and working well on the Colorado River. So, Mr. Chairman, really that's all I've got to report today.
Any question for the director?
I'd note upper Stillwater, I don't know if it's still spilling, but if you haven't seen upper Stillwater spill, it may be.
Everybody needs to see it at least.
It is impressive.
We appreciate that, Randy, and Central Utah has actually invited staff up on a tour to see that happen, which I believe is next week.
It's next week. The division staff has been invited up, and we'll be visiting there on, I think, Thursday. So if any of you'd like to jump on and come with us, you're welcome to. So.
Thank you.
If I might add, Norm and I were elbowing each over here. Somehow that bounteous water skipped the severe river drainage, and it skipped southern Utah, and reservoirs are dry, and Yuba's 22% is all, and it'll go dry. And you know, the state's been bountifully blessed, but we on the severe and down in Norm's area, we must not be living right or something.
Well, just don't take it personal.
We need to do some real soul searching.
When we were in Farron the other day, and they were talking about having to spill or take 22,000 acre feet out of that mill site dam. The largest pond in San Juan County is only 9,000 acre feet, and it's only at about 80% relative.
But I think it was 2 years ago that she was on the other foot. Thank you. Anything else from the board members? Seeing nothing, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought that this part was